Across the world, we may see a growth in the oil, services, and financial sectors, but it is the agricultural sector that tends to sustain many countries globally. Well, we're being told that across Africa, we have consequences of periodic or sporadic food shortages, and this is as a result of the lack of investment in agriculture in many countries across the continent. How do we stimulate our minds and discussions on the subject of agriculture? In our country, there has been excessive criticism on government that over the last 3, 4, 5, 6 years, investment and budgetary commitment towards agriculture has not been the best, even though there's huge potential for the sector. Well, across the country, there's the belief that if these investments are made right, it could result in the employment of many young people. As we mark Farmers' Day today, we want to stimulate your minds on today's discussion. And so we have Edward Kauri, and he's the Deputy General Secretary for the General Agricultural Workers Union. And Ed, I'm happy to have you.
Thank you.
Great.
Yeah.
Would you say, as far as our state of agriculture is, it could have been better? How could that have been?
Well, let me use this opportunity to say good morning and happy Farmers' Day to
the farmers especially.
The farmers especially, for who that we are seated here to talk about this. The state of our agriculture is not the best. Certainly we could have been better. We could have been better in the sense that we know our potential. We know where we were before and what we are today. In fact, we have deteriorated in terms of our achievements in agriculture over the years. Some time ago, rice consumption in this country, 70% of it was produced in this country. We only imported less than 30%. Today is the reverse. It tells us that we have not done so well when it comes to rice production. And if you take sector by sector, or subsector by subsector within the agriculture sector, you will see that we are not doing well. For that matter, we have not performed well. It could have been better.
When we attained independence in 1957, and indeed 10 years after that, agriculture was said to be one of the main potential areas for which we can develop. Of course, we've seen Europe going through the agrarian periods of investment and all those times when they had to do machinery and make sure that they had vast acreages of agriculture and all those investments. Those areas have come to stay. They've developed further into other critical sectors. What have we not done well? I mean, not in terms of budgetary support, but in our thinking.
Well, it's all about our development strategy. We have departed completely from the development strategy that we got at independence, and which indeed was good. Much of the infrastructure and development pride that we still have today is as a result of what we had at independence. Years after independence, I mean, the few years during Kwame Nkrumah's time, and then later in the 70s by the Achampon's regime. You don't need to think too much. It's just because the ideas are there. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. What you need to do is to commit yourself to ideas. And generally speaking, Ghana, we have too many ideas. And too many ideas themselves do not constitute action. What we fail is action. We need few ideas. And those few ideas, we stick to them. If you want to put up a house, you simply have to have that idea. What type of house you want? What do I have to do? You follow step by step. You need to mold the bricks, you need to do this, you need to do that, on every stage. And eventually you have the building. But if in the course of putting up the building, you think that there's another idea that you need to rather go and rent and abandon it and go and start another structure, you end up not even having one single house.
Is that what commitments and strategy towards agriculture has been very much truncated?
It is not only in agriculture, it's about our whole development strategy. One, today we are implementing an export-led development strategy, which by itself is not the best.
Very skewed?
Very skewed and very need
poorly
oriented.
implemented.
It's not need oriented. It's not need oriented. Development must be need oriented. You export to who? Why are you exporting? You don't export what you need yourself. You first have to make sure that you don't import what you need. In fact, you only import when you cannot produce it. But where you can produce it, then you should be able to produce it. And again, we should look at agriculture in two ways. One, when you develop agriculture, it meets your consumption needs. And at the same time, it provides the raw materials for industries to grow. So that the raw materials that you cannot get from your own economy, you can now import those raw materials to stem up your production. So certainly we have moved away from that. We are almost exporting, we are exporting almost every crop in this country. We have yam, we have been exporting yam. But go to the market today, the prices of yam are now shooting up because the season is going. But some few months back, it was just a glut. You go to tomatoes, we are importing tomatoes. But when it gets to the harvesting time, there's glut. Oranges, move there, a glut. You know, it's simply we don't know what we are about. Yet we want to export them.
But what happened to the phrase and what we're being told about value addition? Because that could have prevented or better use of excess crops during the glut seasons.
Value addition is only when you think that you want to consume it yourself. Why is it that we are not adding so much value addition to cocoa? All these years, much of our cocoa is still exported in what? In raw beans. Because the target is the consumer there. And that consumer wants the raw beans. He doesn't want your processed cocoa. And when you process the cocoa, he then puts more tariffs on it. Here we have farmers who do not even see chocolate. Cocoa is not something that is a household product here.
Even though we produce.
Even though we produce.
Okay.
Because our focus is the external market. But if our focus had been domestic market, by now we would have had so many products out of cocoa which we are using here. The excess will be exported. That is what we are not doing. And it's not just to say that you are looking inward, but you must protect yourself first. And that is the problem. Because why are we interested in oil? Just because we'll get more foreign exchange from it. We are not looking at oil to say that, look, to make sure that we don't import. If that is the reason why we are struggling to have oil, then that would be great because we'll reduce our imports. But it is not the reason why we are doing that.
As a Deputy General Secretary of a union, at what point do you have to be very circumspect to make sure that you don't delve into the realm of the excessive frame of criticism of policy handlers? And when we say policy handlers, we're talking about government. When we say that the growth hasn't been well over the last, is it 7 years or so?
Well, in order not to jump into the street criticisms which have no basis, is to look at the fundamentals.
Okay.
And those fundamentals cut across. It's not about a government of today. That is why we are where we are.
It's just the wrong strategy the country is in.
The structure of the economy remains the same. We are not investing enough to transform agriculture.
Okay. You go around.
Yeah.
Tell me, what if, let's say, we were having a stakeholder consultation on it, policy people, unionized people, academics, etc., and even the grounds farmers, etc., would have been the ideal start-off point to say these are the structures we're creating, bearing in mind that Zimbabwe years ago was in a certain state, South Africa currently is also in a certain state as far as agriculture is. What would have been the base structures for which we can say, well, we can project 10 years, this is where we're getting to?
Well, first and foremost, agriculture is based on water. Without water, there's no agriculture. So all interventions in agriculture will be dependent upon the availability of water. Today, you should not be told, I should not be told, that the rain pattern is not good enough. When we have rains, they come in excess. When we don't have them, we have drought. And you can see today that we are suffering from other things because we lack rain. Akosombo Dam is drying up. We are unable to generate the energy that we used to because the dam is low, because the rains have not come in the quantities that we needed. this one is not about agriculture, but you can see the consequences of it. What we need to do in the next 10 years is to invest heavily in irrigation agriculture. The weather pattern has shown us. We all see it. When the rains are supposed to come, they will not come. Do we need stakeholder consultation on this? Why do we deceive ourselves that we don't know the problems? It's just because we lack commitment. We lack long-term commitment. Of course, one will not say that there's no investments in irrigation, but how sustainable is it? How do we sustain that type of investment? So the next 10 years, where is our target? How much our land, agricultural land, is going to be irrigated? We need to invest heavily in that. We did this with electricity over the years, you know, where electricity was even sent to people and they didn't have the use for it. So our per capita consumption of electricity today, according to statistics, we are next to South Africa in Africa, because if we look at the spread, over 70% of the Ghanaian population or area is linked to electricity. This is a good thing because we started it long ago. We can do this. The next 10 years, you will be marveled the number of irrigation projects that we'll be able to put up. And after that, you now have water for your agriculture. All scientific and all other things will now depend on that. But you see, we adopt the easier way. If agriculture is not able to give us our food demands, we simply import. It's easier to import. We get the banks, they grant them loans, and then they just import rice and flood the whole place. And that is what is killing it. So it's irrigation. That's the future of agriculture in this country.
Will irrigation lead to us seeing large acreages of plantations, etc.? Or let me just rephrase my question. Perhaps our country is very much not good for plantation agriculture, so we just need to keep it a lot more subsistence as there.
No, our country,
we have the potential.
We have the potential.
Who tells you that?
I am telling you because I am on the ground. We developed plantation agriculture in the 1970s as a way of an additional source of foreign exchange for to cocoa. We have the oil palm plantations in the eastern region, Ghana Oil Palm Development Company. We have Benzo Oil Palm. We have Chupu Oil Palm. We have North Palm. We have rubber plantations, which is in the western region. We have another one, which is at Subri, and everywhere.
But the point is, we can't always be depending on the state. To be having all these plantations and be managing the states of agriculture and the companies or the producers in the value chain always belonging to the state?
Certainly no. That is what we are talking about policy. I myself don't, to a large extent, I don't support where everything must be on the state. These are now literally supported by the state. It is their private company. But let me tell you, our per capita consumption of oil, palm oil, in this country is 500,000 tons.
Really?
Yes, 500,000 tons.
That's massive.
The companies put together in Ghana, they can only provide 150,000 tons.
Annually?
Annually.
That's woefully inadequate.
Woefully inadequate.
So but we import the rest?
We import the rest. What it then means is that we have got the potential. But let me tell you, why should we import so much? Go into the market, just walk across the street, and the different types of vegetable oils that are around.
Then if you're talking about the market, you're talking about Malata and things, because we're close by.
No, when we talk about the market, we just talk about what we consume.
Sure.
What we consume. And therefore, you can easily find, just on the street here, you'll find it. It's imported. What incentives are we giving to the local producers? And let me tell you, where those companies are situated, they are providing direct employment to people who would not even have employment at all. Because labor mobility, they cannot move to any place. You take employment to the doorsteps of the people. That is how employment should be. That is why the employment, the institutions that, or factories or whatever, are sent to where close around the country. You don't put everything in the city. Those companies are dying off because one company alone employs direct employment, labor, workers, 3,500. Not to talk about the outgrowers, the farmers, and not to talk about other people who depend on it. They, to a large extent, even generate their own electricity. One company alone is generating 2.5 megawatts of energy for themselves and then the community. Look at how they are contributing to the economy. Now you allow imports to come into the country and kill all that. So we are simply not focused. We just open too much.
But you do agree that on the other side of the assistance that we have to give to farmers and other relevant players in the agricultural sector is to put things in the geopolitical perspective. We're a member of the WTO.
Yes, we are. And then economic partnership agreement.
Sure.
Yes.
So we cannot just be doing anything and saying that we want to undertake protectionism policy initiatives?
I'm assuring you.
There's room for all that?
I'm assuring you that we are not just, we in civil society and we in General Agricultural Workers Union are not oblivious to these rules.
But you're saying despite all these...
We know them as much as those policymakers know, because we participate in WTO, we participate in all these protocols. Nowhere in those protocols that are saying that you cannot have policies to protect. They frown upon discrimination. They frown upon discrimination. They do not frown upon protection. Because you must set the tables right. The facts must be right. One, what is the basis? This is an infant industry. For instance, if you make it more difficult to import into the country, that does not mean that you are protecting. You have not violated any WTO rule.
Yeah, sure.
I'm telling you. Because many years, more than 10 years.
So where can we put the blame? Is it that the commitment has not been from from governments that we have?
And that is my point. We have not been committed to our own ideas. If we say, for instance, let's buy made in Ghana goods, we must ensure that the made in Ghana goods are there. For instance, why should we have a budget and then a budget allocation to feed our schools, second cycle institutions, and then they go and buy foreign rice to feed? It's a directive. Please. Because
you're saying that's a direct market.
Of course, that's a direct market. And I'm just using that as a direct market. Please buy from the local producers. Any person who violates it, please, you are dismissed.
So just like in India, they make sure the tariffs on imported cars are high. And so even if you're a minister, you're compelled to use the tatters and the other ones they have around.
And there are also administrative measures, which we call phytosanitary measures, which, for instance, if we are importing chicken from Togo and you want to make it more expensive, you can say that we have got two ports in this country. The market is Accra, and it's close to just send the products, for instance, from Togo to Accra. You say no, all chicken products must come into this country to Takoradi Harbour. Then, instead of just stopping at Accra here, they now have to go to Takoradi. And from Takoradi to Accra, at the end of the day, the cost is just too much. That is what they do to our products when they enter the European market. They don't violate the protocol. They won't say no, you cannot.
So they certainly have a way of going around.
You get there and they find the problem with your product and all your containers are brought back. That it is not wholesome for them. You have not met standards. Those are administrative. And this is what we need to do. Let me give you an example. In Nigeria, they have started that, look, you can import, but the central bank cannot give you foreign exchange for you to do your importation. If you have your own foreign currency, you can do that. How many companies can do that? You know why? They are simply protecting the local industries. If you cannot import more, then the local industry will take advantage of the market and produce more. So we need a cluster of policies. And sometimes when we talk about agri, sometimes I believe in this.
And if we have the policy, we have to follow through.
We follow through and we ensure that there's linkages. And we must watch. That is what the policy, those who govern the economy, must look at. You may only be in one area of the policy. You don't see the other side. It's just like the elephant and then the seven blind men. It's what you touch, it's what you know. So you in media, you only see what is media. And that's what you are doing. But you see, there must be linkage between media, agriculture, industry, and the rest. So the policies that will come to media, you may not know what the end result is, but it is linking to ensure that it strengthens what? Agriculture.
On the ground.
On the ground. So these linkages are to be done by what? Policy. So you have cluster of policies.
Mr. Karwe, we've always been hearing this argument that there's no credits, funding, etc. for the agricultural sector.
Yes.
But I have been to many communities throughout my practice as a media person. And sometimes I look at the farmers, I know if they take the credit, they can't account for the credit.
No. No, that is not it. That is not it. We simply are not innovative. And when we come out to say that do this, it's like because we are not part of. Look, in the 1990s, workers, public sector workers, used to go on strike around this time because they wanted salary advance from government. And because they did not give them salary advance to use for Christmas, they go on strike. It was very difficult for workers to access loans from the banks. Because the traditional system of banking is that you must provide collateral. How many workers have got collateral to guarantee for their loans? Government came out with a policy that, look, all workers must take their salaries from the banks. And I can quite remember, some banks resisted this policy. Government said, no, it is my directive. All workers must take their salaries from the banks. You know the excuse of the banks? The workers, they just come to check whether the salary has hit the account. And immediately the salary hits the account, they take everything. Therefore, making it expensive for the banks to maintain the accounts. Today, banks move from workplace to workplace to ask workers to come for loans.
So your point is?
My point is that if today there is a policy that banks should leave part of their loan portfolio to agriculture, look, you are not restricting the banks in any way. You are not interfering with their business anyway.
So all comes down to commitment.
Why? It's about the investment. You talked about credit and the rest. And I'm saying that we have enough money to finance agriculture. It's just the policy direction. If you say 1% of banks' loan portfolio should go to agriculture, and there are 28 banks, then you are effectively saying that 28% of total loans in a year go to agriculture. And the banks will not. It is their duty, and they used to have, they should have.
Now, you know the banks are not philanthropists, so whatever they give out, they have to make sure they're able to recoup.
No one is asking them to do that.
That is why they make sure that you're very much credit worthy.
No one is asking them.
You come for credit.
I'm saying no one is asking them to do that. But they will make sure that when you are a farmer and you need fertilizer, they don't give the money to you. What do you need a loan for? You say you want to buy fertilizer. How many bags? 10 bags. This and that. Say fine.
To bring the invoices or whatever.
Bring it. There's another fertilizer distributor there. We pay the check to
So
them.
you're saying the interlinkages should be there. The banks, even though they will have a portfolio and an account for agriculture disbursement as far as credit is concerned, they also need to make sure they work with suppliers and just sub-industries around the chain.
It's not that they make sure. We are not giving them new directives. That's what they're already doing. The importers, the suppliers, everybody goes to the bank for loans. So the banks sit there and they know everybody. If you want fertilizer, they know this.
What you've been telling me over the last 45 minutes, are you the only one who knows, or it's something that even those who manage the economy know?
That's what I'm saying. It's all about a commitment. So initially you talked about a stakeholder meeting and all that. I said, do we need that again?
We don't.
My point is that we just refuse to commit ourselves to the idea.
If we remain the state in which we are, the state of agriculture, how would it seem in the next 10 years?
Current state of agriculture?
No. The way it is.
The next 10 years, disaster for this country. We will go into war.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much for passing through our studios. And Edward Kariwe, or Kariwe, is it Kariwe?
Yeah, Kariwe.
Okay, Kariwe. He is the Deputy General Secretary for the General Agricultural Workers Union. We've been tinkering on issues of agriculture this morning. We know that it's at the heart of many people. According to what the statistics are and the various literature we have based on research, it could be one of the largest sectors to employ not only a lot more young people, but a lot more employable people. Well, the question has been, what is the commitment of the country? What is the commitment of policymakers towards agriculture? And today, as we mark Farmers' Day, we know many of you have had all these thoughts on your mind. Let me lead by reading a couple of your comments this morning. And, well, many of you have been writing. And this one, Amos called Kofi, currently in Akuse, has a lot to say about agriculture and farming in his community. Very long. And then we also have this one coming from Chumesi of Kede, and I've visited many communities close to Kede, Topiase, etc. Odan, and we know it's the hub of oil plantations in our country. But it's, the comment starts, both government and well-to-do agricultural institutions should concentrate more on agriculture and the key areas where production is done. Kwabibrim district, for example, has one of the worst roads in Ghana, I agree, but is rich in palm oil, cocoa and other cash crops. What is being done is a worry of Chumesi, and I know that you will agree to that as
Certainly.
well.
I just returned from that place yesterday.
It's sad.
Terrible.
It's sad.
The roads.
Terrible.